This is Scott Lallman from Zasan. We're going to start the meeting shortly. I'm already recording and streaming the meeting. Please make sure that your mics are muted unless you are speaking. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. The special called meeting of the South San Antonio Independent School District Budget Committee will now come to order. Today is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. The time is 4 p.m. Michelle, if you can have a roll call, please.
Kevin Rasco. Mr. Kevin Rasco.
Present.
Mr. Tony Carl.
Present.
Mr. Gilbert Rodriguez.
Present. Thank you, Michelle. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, Texas Pledge, prayer, and our call to action.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to these one state under God, one and indivisible. Please bow your head in prayer. Lord, as we gather today at this meeting, we ask that you will be in our midst. Help us to make decisions that will be pleasing to you. Let this meeting be productive and help us to keep you at the forefront of our minds. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Call to action.
All students enjoy successful education experiences,
Empowering
allowing
them
them to make decisions while enriching their lives in the future they
to
create.
create.
Thank you, Ms. Collier. The first item on the agenda is the citizens to be heard. Mr. Rasco.
At this time, I do not have any citizens to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Rasco. The chair recognizing no citizens to be heard comments were submitted. We will move to the next item on the agenda, which is Discussion and possible action. Item number 1, 2020-2021 staffing. We have vacancies and grade span ratios. Ms. Sendejo.
Here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Our committee, great to see everyone here today. We did provide some backup, and I know, Mr. Rodriguez, we will provide some additional information based on some of the questions that were submitted. So we have been working very closely with our principals on our 2020-2021 staffing alongside the grade span ratios. At this time, I'd like to shift over to Mr. Baum, and he will provide some specifics there, and then we can answer any specific questions for you. Moving forward, we can do that as well.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I'm getting better. Thank you for the opportunity to visit today. As you look at the list of the meeting attendees, there's about 15 others that are listening, and I feel like they should be in here with us because this is their work that we're going to report on. So, and I'm sure there's some head shaking going on when I say that. I just hope it's shaking up and down and not side to side. But anyway, we provided some information in your packet on our staffing. I know that there will be some other things to hand out. One of the things that I struggle with in preparation of a lot of this material is, we had to have this all ready going into the weekend, and we don't ever stop. We don't ever just say, okay, that's good enough, and then the hay's in the barn and go rest. So you will see some updates, and you will hear some updates beyond what we have provided you. Ms. Sendejo, did you have a staffing document that you?
No, I'm going to go with this one first for now.
Okay. Okay. The one that we uploaded, or the one that we? Okay. All right. So Mr. Lolliman, if you will pull that staffing document up.
The student teacher ratio?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Okay, our Department of Academics, Division of Academics team put together student data. We ran this through HR and collaborated on it. And kind of all got in the same room, kind of got our heads shaking in the same direction on this. But we wanted to look at where some opportunities were from a class size standpoint. I think the spring is obviously a good time to look at staffing, and we face some challenges this year, no question about it. But I think you'll find the information to be useful. I am going to take a moment and hand you out a document. Got some additional information on it.
Are we able to get electronic copies?
Yes, absolutely. So just went through and looked at our staffing. Not that we kind of took a backwards approach on this, looking at all the personnel that existed on each and every campus. We looked at it by enrollment, and then the administrative positions they had, whether they had a principal, a vice principal, counselor, reading teacher, librarian, special ed teachers, PE teachers, fine arts teachers, all of those teachers at elementary level that fall outside of the classroom. They are in fact teachers. They do have the role of teacher, but at our elementaries, when we implement a pullout such as music or PE, then obviously they are not going to have specific students assigned to them. So we call them wraparound personnel. But then we look at our student to teacher ratio, our administrator ratio, our wraparound staff ratio, and then our aid ratio. But one of the things that I think is important, and I'm going to jump around just a little bit here. If you go to page 3 of the handout that I just gave you, it is on Athens Elementary, and the data is not any different than what you see on the screen. Scott, I sent an email just a few moments ago that you can pull up the marked on document, the colored document. But you see the peach color, kind of a goldenrod color there. When you see that color on these charts, it indicates that we're what I'm going to refer to as soft. We've got a lot of room in that class. It's not a situation where we can eliminate, but we could definitely add students there and help ourselves out. In the case of Athens, you see that we have one teacher at every grade level, and then where there's a bilingual classroom and a normal general instruction classroom. There is one teacher in each one of those. So there's one teacher in each section across the board. So there's not any efficiencies to gain there from staffing. But as you look at the average class size, obviously there are some opportunities to add campuses, and we'll talk about the focus on growing the size of those campuses. If you look down at the bottom in the highlighted yellow area, you'll see totals excluding P and L. And what the P and L is, we have PPCD classes at some campuses, but not all, and that is for our severe and profound students that we try to group those together, and there is a special setting for those. We don't have those at every campus, but you may only be able to teach 6, 7, 8 kids in a particular classroom at a given time. So it's not fair to apply those to the general efficiency metric of that impact in their class size. Those principals typically do not choose to have those classes, nor do they get to move those classes away. That is a district supported decision that we try to put those where we can best utilize those resources to educate those kids. The L, similar concept, those are our life skills classes. As we look at Athens, there are neither of those. There's neither a PPCD or a life skill class, but you'll see that there are 14 teachers for 221 students, which creates a ratio of 15.8. Y'all know that through the DOI, the District of Innovation process, that we will allow a campus to go up to 24-1 in a classroom. Then anything over 24 comes to you guys, and y'all would be requested, or you would be met with a waiver request at that point that y'all would either approve, or we would hire another position or move a teacher around. But DOI has helped us there. But you'll see the largest class size at any grade level is 20. Oddly enough, that's our Head Start class, and Head Start has a 20-to-1 ratio, as not like their typical 22-to-1 ratio. And then the wraparound staff, you see the principal, the vice principal, the counselor, reading teacher, so on and so forth at each one of our campuses. As we move on to Armstrong, you see a new color here. You see a couple of new colors. You see grade at the bottom, preschool program for children with disabilities. That's the PPCD that I referred to, and then also the life skills class. The life skills class, there are 10 students in there. There's a good chance that's all that class can support because of the needs of the students. And it might be that if you had 12 kids, you'd have to have 2 of those life skills sections. So that is not the typical classroom setting. So you're going to see some low class sizes. So we have taken that out of their overall ratio. If you see just below the gray, it shows there's 18 teachers. Well, there's only 16 of those, excluding the PPCD and the life skills students. There's 306 students. So you see a ratio of 19.1. We're starting to look a little bit better from a class size standpoint. The pink color that you see on the 4th grade there, that is an opportunity. If you look at the 3rd grade, you see that there are currently 44 students in the 3rd grade. As those move forward to the 4th grade, then all of a sudden, if you have two teachers, you're at a 22-to-1 ratio, and we're good with that. Now then, if 5 more show up from somewhere, maybe we're not good with it. So it's difficult to project. But we know as a district, we've been in a period of declining enrollment. We certainly hope the worm turns there, but we have to start somewhere with planning. There's a couple of different approaches. A lot of times districts will start looking at this data, and they'll look at their district snapshot data that occurs in October. Well, these numbers are from March, right before we left for spring break, right before the COVID crisis hit. And the numbers definitely look different in the spring than they do in the fall. It doesn't matter where you are. There's typically more students in the fall than there are in the spring. And you can roll those spring numbers forward and generally get pretty close. If you're in a situation of fast growth where there's building and people moving in, it's a little bit different scenario, but we don't find ourselves there yet, but we are hopeful.
It is sometimes when we move 4th
We certainly could. It depends on what those, but there are already 3 teachers in the 5th grade.
Well, I'm looking at 61 in 4th grade currently, and if they move, so using the same logic you're saying we would need to maybe reduce 4th grade, we'd need to maybe up 5th grade.
Well, you've got 3 teachers waiting in 5th grade that would
okay.
mathematically accept
Gotcha.
66 students. In the 5th grade, the 22-to-1 does not apply at the 5th
Gotcha.
grade level. It goes up, but and it's not all about efficiencies. Obviously, there are different instructional settings that require additional support, but we are of the opinion that the 3 teachers in 5th grade should certainly be able to take care of the 61 students that are matriculating forward. You get into a situation where you lose 10 of them, and then all of a sudden you start looking at that 25-to-1 ratio. But there are some opportunities, and we'll add yet another color here in a minute. On cue as we go forward to Benavides Elementary.
Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
moving forward, I just have a couple questions.
Yes, sir, please.
So at the bottom here, where it says other professional staff.
Can you mute, Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes, but as we move forward, Mr. Baum, is it for each campus down at the bottom where you have listed other professional staff? Is that every staff member listed there is on that campus every day, full-time?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then,
And a couple of variables that you'll see there, Mr. Rodriguez, every once in a while, you'll see the occurrence of 2 special education teachers. Again, it depends on the needs, and our special ed department is on top of that staffing model to make sure that we're serving the kids. Because you can't just have a static model and say it's good for everybody. We need to
Right,
address
right.
the kids.
yes,
And I'm
thank you.
unmuted. Sorry about that.
I have,
Yes,
Mr. Baum, in relation to what Mr. Rodriguez was asking, the reading teacher that's assigned, is that a specialist or just a regular full-time teacher?
the reading teacher on each of the elementary
On each
campuses.
of the elementaries?
It is, it's a reading teacher specifically for that.
Okay, so, because we have reading specialists, don't we?
We have
Like instructional coaches, don't we have?
professional coaches, and then we also have a reading teacher
Okay,
at campuses.
so this is a full-time reading teacher assigned to the campus.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
That is their job, Ms. Prado, and
As you look down towards the bottom, you'll see instructional support staff, in addition to that reading, in addition to the instructional coach, there are 11 aides on that campus, and they will share in some of those reading remediation
Right.
projects situations as well. Great question.
Mr. Rodriguez, to add to what Mr. Baum said about special ed, and the other thing this happened, we are getting to and that amount with the SOA director, and we value that based on need, and then of course the number. So if the number of higher in certain areas, of course, there was some internal transfers prior to making any consideration for additional hires, moving that forward. And that also helps in balancing the ratios of sizes as well. We internally work with that for area staff.
Thank you, Ms. Navarro.
on the next page, as it relates to Benavides Elementary, you see a blue color there on the pre-K bilingual. One teacher, there's no student currently assigned. That would be a recommendation for a new section of bilingual pre-K to be offered at that campus. As you get down into the other grades, you start seeing evidence of larger sizes, and that's one of the district opportunities to expand the pre-K program and make that a bilingual pre-K section at Benavides, which would require the addition of one teacher there. But overall, their average class size, top to bottom, is 19.3. It's certainly, you see two soft sections there, the kinder bilingual and the first bilingual, but those are growing sections, and we do anticipate that we will get away from the softness, if you will. There are 15, one additional student in each of grades and that color goes away. But we wanted a kind of an alert indicator, and that's the 15 is the number that we chose. That's a pretty commonly used divisor on class size. Any other questions on Benavides? Padilla Elementary, we see several pink sections. We see pink at the 1st, 4th, and 5th grade level. If you look at 4th grade, we would be rolling 42 students forward. If we went to 2 teachers at that level, assuming that those 42 all showed up and no others, we would be at a 22-to-1. If we move 47 students forward to the 4th grade, that's kind of a tweener. It would be 23.5, and certainly that they would have us under the 24-to-1. The DOI would allow us to do that. Now then, that principal, as they evaluate their staff, they may look at the subjects that are in the teachers that are in those classes, and they may be newer teachers. They may be teachers that would benefit from a smaller class size, or the students that are in the class may dictate that we would need smaller class size. But that is certainly an opportunity to look at. It's not a mandate, but it is an opportunity. Up the kinder to first, we roll 47 students forward. You have 23.5 if you go to 2. Might be a little tough at the 1st grade level, but we would certainly count on the principal's expertise and opinion. But you could go from 4 potentially down to 2 there, and not be outside of your ratios. But again, that's a potential decision to be made there. But those pinks contribute to a class size of 16, 14, and 15 respectively, which is holding the average class size for the entire school down at 16.7. So we are not particularly efficient in that location there.
If I may, Mr. Baum. So we're looking here at for instance, the 62 in 1st grade, right? And if I flip back to Athens Elementary, now with some of those students, could they possibly some of those students that were in the attendance at 1st grade level? Okay.
You'll see.
Yes, sir. You will also see it's more like a triangle between Price, Carrillo, and Athens. So you will see, when you see the big picture, that is where you observe that the numbers are much lower because of the ratio and of the shifting of some of those students opting to go back to Athens, and then of course others remaining. And that is because at Carrillo, within the first week, based on the numbers and the number of students that were coded as present, we made some adjustments and moved out. We had a larger staff here already in the beginning of the year, and still, obviously, we see that the ratios are still quite low. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions related to Carrillo before we move on? If you turn the page to Kindred, you see pinks and blues here, and that there are currently only 2 2nd grade teachers, but there are 60 1st graders that are coming. You've got 40 kindergartners that would be moving into 1st grade, so it would make sense that you could just do a unit move between 1st and 2nd grade. If all those assumptions hold true, that's what you would do. You would take a 1st grade teacher and move them to 2nd grade. But we definitely have an opportunity at the 3rd and the 5th grade level to reduce teachers. If you look, we had 2 5th grade teachers, and as we let out for spring break, we were up to 53 students, so that's 26.5. So that's pushing the envelope. Doesn't require a waiver, but it is creating some challenges. And again, that's where it's important that a principal understand their staff. I have seen teachers that can handle 26 kids marvelously. They can be effective with 26 kids. I've seen teachers that are better suited for a little bit smaller class size, and you don't want to put good teachers in a bad spot. and put them to where they're not comfortable because they're not going to perform. And it certainly impacts the student at that point. So it's very important that we know what our staff looks like and extend grace to them when they say, hey, I know they can handle the 26, or I know that they can't. And they truly know better than any of us do on those tweeners.
I have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Baum, on the 5th grade to 53 students with 2 teachers, how do you get an average of 18 students?
That is a great.
That is a great question. Let me pull up.
Mr. Baum,
What?
that should be 3 teachers there. That's a typo.
The 3 teachers, that's a typo.
So three grade teachers at Kinder?
Yeah, it's 3 currently and would go to 2. And I put 2. I jumped the gun there.
And we'll give you the average of 17.6 at 18. So it's the teacher number that should be 3 and everything else remains 53 and 18.
So the 2 should say 3?
Yes, ma'am.
And so the overall ratio of that campus is 19.9, and it just so happens that those opportunities outside of it, you got 19 and 20 and 20, and a 23. So your overall class size ratio, once you take that behavior academic class out, which is the same as we're excluding that the same as we would with the PCD or the life skills class. You're still sitting with a 19.9 ratio. As we move to MADLA, pretty solid staffing across the board. Again, exclude the life skills class. But the lowest average class size that you see is 16. There are actually 4 sections that are at 18, 2 that are at 20, and 1 that is at 21. So an 18.8 across the board. We feel really good about the staffing number there. The kindergarten section there, where you see that there are 4 teachers, pre-K is not necessarily a great predictor of what you're going to have in kinder. You have to look further, and then also lean on the principal to look at their enrollment. The first grade class that was at 53, if we move those back to kinder the year prior, well, the kinder class is now 20 students larger than last year's kinder class was. So what does next year's class look like? There's some guesswork and some reliance on principal discussion there. We know that in our pre-K classes that there are sometimes 3 and 4 year olds in there. So it's not just a matter of rolling that number up. And there may be students coming from one of the other pre-K classes to get there. So we count on that early enrollment. We count on that early indication to show how many students will be in that kindergarten class. It's the least exact science of all of them.
There you go. I was going to add something. There was ma'am.
Because it's a large group of kids in some of these classes. And are you also taking into consideration that Mount is one of the campuses that is not performing well?
Yes, ma'am.
When you're looking at the class sizes?
We will. I also wanted to share alongside that, because of the fact that this year for pre-K4, we will see an increase of pre-K 4-year-olds because we're registering all 4 pre-K4s, with the exception of the 3-year-olds that are coming in under Head Start and the 3-year-olds that rolled from 3 to 4 under Head Start. I'm just kind of gauging the numbers there to ensure that as many of those students do come in. In addition to that, Mrs. Prado, as a priority there, we do have an additional plan for MADLA specifically because of the state of where we are in, and that we're carrying the same letter grade for another academic school year according to what the state and the guidance that they have provided.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
No, thank you for asking that. So that was going to be my question.
I see no color.
You're right. It looks like we're okay, so then that kind of points us in the direction on what you mean. Yeah, for
Right.
corporate policy.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you.
So what we probably also see, and we hopes obviously, is that the number of 4-year-olds that are coming in will start aligning with the number of kindergartners to some extent, but because we've known historically there has been a trend that we see pre-K, because we go from qualifying to kindergarten where they don't have to qualify, and we see that increase. I couldn't tell you specifically what that percentage number is, but we do see an average of about 150 to 200 additional kindergartners between pre-K and kinder start. And the goal is to now bring them in as pre-kindergartners rather than at kinder moving forward. So that again allows us for some additional indicators as we are planning for the future years in those lower grade levels. And then of course, getting them in here to our district sooner rather than later.
The next one we'll look at is Five Palms Elementary. It's one of our largest campuses with 489 students. They are at 18.1. But as many sections as they have, there's a lot of capacity. And I've got a sheet listed with observations on it that we'll look at kind of in summation when we're done with this. But we definitely have capacity there. We've got four classes that we are soft on our class size. There, you see kindergarten bilingual moving to first grade, and then first grade bilingual. We don't, it still appears that we're going to have 4 teachers for a total of 66 kids, because there's not an even split between the regular ed and the bilingual ed. So, obviously when they enter that bilingual strand, they tend to stay in that strand. So it's almost like you're running two separate schools, but the numbers do align well in this instance. And overall, there is a ratio of 18.1, 489 students in 27 different teacher classrooms. If there are no questions on Five Palms, we will move to Hutchins. You see 3 of the peach color that are soft with 15, 15, and 14. And then there are actually 4 opportunities to realign the teaching staff or reduce the teaching staff. Kinder, first, fourth, and that 5th grade bilingual section. We're showing 2 5th grade bilingual teachers. Yet when you look at the 4th grade bilingual class, there are only 14 students there. So that's a pretty easy one to see. And that's not to say we won't need them elsewhere, but there's an opportunity for some efficiencies there.
I would like to add, when you take a look at Five Palms, and this is something that in the beginning of last year, just learning the way we plan for class sizes in our district, there's a pattern within our Five Palms, Hutchins, I'm going to say Price, not too much, but for sure the Hutchins and Five Palms, because what we also do with our bilingual classes, we've identified bilingual, general bilingual, and then bilingual GT. And so from what I understand in previous years, we would delve in to that specificity. And so we were providing that GT bilingual class, and then of course our general bilingual, if you want to call it that. So that's why you see an additional shade here. That will transition out moving forward, because it has made it extremely difficult to do that when you have 13 GT bilingual students, and now you're requiring a specific FTE only to serve that population. And of course, now moving forward in future years, let's say 4 years from now, 5 years from now, with dual language carrying over, all this will eventually, yes, we'll flatten that out pretty nicely because of the dual program coming into fruition year after year. So that was something that myself, I questioned as far as why is it that we have it this, but it's how we've had it done in the past. And so we're still working through that. And this next phase of dual language will really assist us to ensure that we're, again, normalizing some of that.
Moving on to Hutchins Elementary, we see that there are 3 sections that we would categorize as soft at 14, 15, and 15. And then there are actually 4 opportunities to retract or collapse 4 positions there. Got pretty small class size in kinder, first, 4th grade. We've got 3 teachers, and there are only 42 students that are slated to come and using the roll forward method. And then 5th grade bilingual, there is only 1 4th grade bilingual teacher, and it's unlikely that we will need a second 5th grade bilingual teacher. So there are 4 positions, 4 potential position collapses there. Any questions on those? Okay.
I just want to comment. Just to revisit what you already said, Mr. Mammons, for those who are listening, when we're talking about collapsing or reducing, we're primarily talking about identifying where we become more efficient. And then, like you said, we may not need them here, but we may need them somewhere else. So, I mean, that's the whole purpose, is trying to narrow that down to see what decisions can be made with the most amount of data that we have. So,
Absolutely. And alongside with what you're sharing, Mr. Rodriguez, just this last week in our conversation with our principals 2 weeks ago, I myself provided a end of the June 26th date of coming back and analyzing where our enrollment is. That's why it's so critical for us to ensure that as we are launching Save Your Seat, that we are making those gains, because it will definitely drive what would be the outcome of FTE structures and shifting if there is, or collapsing of any kind. So it really is, it has to align based on what we currently have, how our numbers are moving on re-enrollment and additional enrollment that's coming in. And we've talked about, if we have 8 pre-kindergarten classes at what campus, great, we'll work through that. That's a better problem to have than not having enough kiddos for us to be prepared for. So it does go hand in hand, and is definitely a team effort coming together with our principals, just coming together to ensure that we are, one, re-enrolling, and we're moving the needle. The other positive end that I would say on this, on why enrollment and where we are, just thinking of a year ago and when we started to re-enroll or enroll, where it's night and day. And even then, I've shared with our staff that we were behind, and we've already had conversations about what 21, 22 looks like, because you got to get ready almost a year in advance for the next set of enrollment. So it is definitely a trend, but again, of course, just understanding how can we continue to strengthen the process, and then we know what we're driving with. And so it's not a surprise at the last minute, and there shouldn't be. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ms. Anijo. I certainly appreciate that approach.
I think everybody is familiar with Jim Collins and Good to Great, and having the right number of people on the bus and in the right seats on the bus, and just with our staff turnover and with retirements and the things that go on, there are always going to be opportunities to reseat people on the bus, put them in other opportunities, and we're in really good shape in most instances. These are opportunities. It's just that's what we wanted to present you with the opportunity. But there's lots of analysis that goes on in determining. It's not 100% prescriptive. It's not 100% data driven decision. We want to make data informed decisions. And this is but one piece of that data information. Palo Alto, one of the things that stands out to me in this, you look, we've got pink at the 4th and 5th grade level. Those are also the 2 largest grade levels at that campus. 5th grade, we are we are moving on 91 happy smiling faces onto the next level. And, down at first, second, and third, we've got 68, 64, and 63 kids respectively. So that's a classic example of an opportunity that exists. The addition of those 91 kids may mean something at the middle school level. We may have to bolster our staffing there. But again, there's an opportunity at the fourth grade level and at the fifth grade level. There's 5 teachers in the fifth grade, 87 students moving forward. 4 teachers would be a 22-1, and at the fourth grade level, with 63 kids, 3 would be less than a 22-1, about 21 and a third, I believe. So some opportunities there. The 20.4 across the board, excluding the PPCD and the life skills class, that's very efficient staffing. But as those kids, that large class of 91 moves on, it could change that 20.4 in a heartbeat. So we need to be ready to adjust to the changing class size. Any questions on Palo Alto? Okay, Price Elementary. We talked a little bit about the triangle earlier with Carrillo, Athens, and Price. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We see that there is a need for an additional dual language pre-K class, but we also can collapse a regular kinder class, and that may be a one-year move. We may end up with one kinder and one kinder bilingual, but with there being a Head Start, a pre-K, and a dual language pre-K, might be that we have to reinstall that positional unit there, and that may affect our decision making as we move forward there. We're a little bit soft in the third grade bilingual and the fourth grade bilingual, but those situations should resolve themselves again. 18-1 across the campus. It's not the best, but it's not awful at all, and it gets much stronger given that one opportunity for positional collapse at the kindergarten level. So that is running through each of the elementaries. Again, that's the easiest, and although we're not totally prescriptive, it gives us the opportunity to. Secondary is a complete different animal. When you start looking at secondary, the challenge is to offer a robust curriculum, a viable curriculum that's going to be an opportunity for all students, right? We want to be a school of choice. We want kids coming to us. We don't want them going to another district because a different opportunity exists there. So as you try to create these programs, as you try to create these strands, these opportunities, it's easy to get out of balance. And then you decide, do you want to rein that in a little bit? Do you want to pull staffing in a little bit, or do you think it's important to continue operating? It's definitely a balancing act. And you all know the board has lots of meetings. We have a lot of meetings internally with staff, and it has been one of the best meetings that I've had, getting Division of Academics together with HR and finance personnel, just great team members to work on this and ask a lot of what ifs. And there's not one person that's going to make decisions in isolation, but we've all got to think alike. We've got to be moving in the same direction and agree on the Division of Academics, Charlie Gallardo and Dr. Ruben Carrillo. This is data that they track on an ongoing basis, but to roll that into the staffing process and use that as we make decisions as a district, that's the way it's supposed to be done. So I certainly applaud that team. The moral that I know we're all spending time with our families doing things, and Charlie Gallardo calls and he says, "Hey, I got a question." It's just you hate to see that, but you're happy to see that at the same time that this is important to our people. We've got a team of professionals, and I couldn't appreciate them more than I do. So from a secondary standpoint, obviously we've got the high school.
I just have one more question on that. So we're implementing the dual language, right? I see Price, language, and I saw Benavides. Was there
No, there will be, what you're currently looking at is what we have in place today. So I think what Mr. Baum is sharing with you, one of the potential options, for what we're doing alongside Mr. Abundes and the bilingual team is working through the current staff that we have to ensure that we have enough dual language teaching staff within before out again posting for that availability. So what you will see here, I would say maybe in a few weeks, you will see what that structure looks like with the teachers, the number of students, even the rosters now formulating now that we're re-enrolling. So it's a very normal process for that to kind of go into fruition, just like we did roll over our students from one year to the next. Because even the information that you're receiving on a weekly basis for re-enrollment, it knocked off our seniors, but now we're seeing our pre-K enrollment, hoping that we can offset, and then of course with new enrollment. So not anything here specifically noted here at this time, but you will see eventually that as it transpires into those classroom and rosters and number of teachers that we need for that. So again, the goal is to work through that, and we'll give another example. You and I have had a brief discussion about this, because even the staff that is being considered for West Campus High School, we are working very close with Dr. Hernandez and the staff there, based on the numbers, based on the students that are coming directly into West Campus, what FTEs now would be transitioned over here, rather than again starting a new set of staff for this. And we're trying to really be efficient and making those adjustments. What you have not seen just yet is like the CTE numbers, that specificity with data. We've had conversations. I know that Dr. Hernandez and the team, along with Central, we're looking at those as far as what could be an option of shifting away, just because of what our data is telling us, to make that determination. So what you'll see eventually is the 2020, 2021, and what that's going to look like. So right now, it probably look a lot less real, since these wonderful, along with the other team members, the ongoing re-enrollment, we're moving the needle little by little. So the goal is to continue to do that.
I can use the words for my school since I haven't.
Come on out.
Part of my question was the two current dual language are on that side of the bridge, right? We have Neil Armstrong, we have Five Points.
We have Frank Mata Elementary affording potentially an opportunity for, for the kids on this side, would not have to commute all the way down. So yes, ma'am. Okay.
I know you've identified the dual language here at one of the campuses, but it's my understanding that Athens is also going to be a dual language campus. Why is it not annotated here with assigning one teacher?
I need to clarify, because the only campus that we see dual language here, and that's inaccurate for whatever, if that was an example of there, you don't see any dual language noted here specifically. It's just the bilingual or the DL on here.
DL, is that dual language?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so should it not have been annotated in Athens
It will be for 2020, 2021.
for this next school year?
Yes, ma'am. So what you see here is still under bilingual. So what we have here for you is just the average size, what we are. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Right. So that's all we're speaking to is current numbers, right? So that is why the goal is to, one, re-enroll all the 88,065-ish, give or take, minus our 500, our 575 seniors, and then making that up, whether it is new enrollment or obviously our pre-K coming in on as well.
So are you telling me that Price currently has a dual language class?
No,
So why? is it
No,
listed
no,
there?
they don't.
This is for this year.
they don't.
I am looking at the original data set.
I don't. No one has there is no dual language in any of our schools.
But there was one.
That's on there.
There was one sitting there for Athens. There was a placeholder.
Yeah.
It had no students, and I collapsed.
Probably, okay,
I
that's
didn't-
maybe the case.
I don't want to use the same terminology that I got rid of it. I didn't put it on the chart. So it is in the Division of Academics data that that's an expectation to have that section there.
Well, and what we will do is now come back and eventually, like I said, present with 2020 and then what those numbers look like as we move forward. Because of course we want the justification if it is one collapsing or moving staff, an FTE from one campus to the other, rather than again posting that position and hiring outside when we know that there are some overages in certain campuses that we can work through that we need to prioritize, which is no different than what we did this last year in the beginning of the school year. But again, all these were all FTEs that were approved already. So now it's how do we work? And of course, it could be a resignation, it could be a retirement. So we know that. And then when our principals, and then of course the team has met with Mr. Baum, we've had those conversations of, okay, what can potentially be collapsed, and then communicate with HR, because if we have a running list of potential that could move, that's what we want to do first. Because of course we want to work through the current staff that is with us before heading up, unless we need it specifically for dual language or a special program. That is very normal, and it does require a credential for certain classes or grade levels, just depending on the campus situation. Does that help a little bit?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so secondary, we've got really a 1.5 pager. We'll call it a 2 pager on student data from both high schools and then the 4 middle schools. We have got some more internal discussing to do. We'd like to roll the principals in and strategize as to how we can improve some of these ratios. But again, it comes down to it. And I always use the example of Latin, not to pick on the Latin teacher, but we find ourselves expanding our course offerings. You know, House Bill 5, going back before HB 3, House Bill 5 was huge on creating clusters and strands for career and technical education. And so we bolstered our offerings. And so what happens is you have a student that might be leaving a world languages class and going over and taking something in the CTE strand. And well, we've welded forever, but I'll use welding as an example. We have a glut of students that are now taking welding that are not taking that foreign or that world language. And if we don't adjust our staffing, what happens is we end up with a really inefficient model for our world languages. And then we're hugely efficient at the welding level, or it may be culinary, or it may be floral design. You know, pick a program. And so it's the concept of abandonment. You know, we are constantly adding new initiatives and new programs, and we have to make sure that we are still relevant with our other offerings. And if you've got a student, given the Latin example, if you've got a student that has taken Latin 1 and Latin 2, you certainly want them to have the opportunity to continue in 3 and 4. So you then start looking at online learning opportunities, but you've also got a Latin teacher that is a consideration. So we do want to offer a viable curriculum, but it really can hurt from an overall efficiency standpoint. So tough analytics that need to be performed, and I think we have a team in place that's willing to do that in conjunction with our principals, because we want to take care of our family, but we want to take care of our students first and foremost. That's the part of the family that's the most important. Ms. Sendejo, any observations regarding secondary that you want to speak to? It's certainly more of a work in progress than the elementary is.
Right. Well, just to note, back in November, just with our LSG goals and presentation, we provided some data on CTE and the numbers and the ratios there. As you can see, when you look at the 35-to-1 with the number of teachers, it is due to some of the pathways, the programs that we're offering, and how many students are actively engaged in that certain cluster, let's say, that we continue to offer, that we're just not making those numbers. And that is something that alongside central office with CTE, Division of Academics, alongside Dr. Hernandez, interesting enough, we had this conversation even earlier on in the year about considering and making some decisions here. And it's tough because whether it's 6 students, whether it's 35 students, it impacts our students regardless. Whether it is because we want to provide a new program to more students, or the students that really have been engaged in this particular pathway. It's a tough one regardless. A decision will have to be made. Either way, we're impacting students, or we're impacting our students, whether it is that we consider removing that program from our high schools or keeping it. And of course, it's just one of those where we would have to present and then move forward to make a decision. Just along the way, there would be some type of unfortunate, some additional conversations or follow-up because of the decision we will have to make on this. And this one here is by far the one that is most telling, that we will have to come back and revisit just to, again, maximize on funding and the efforts of maybe other opportunities that other students will be, additional students will really engage.
No, I'm certainly opportunity. I just have a couple of questions. This is encompassing of our academies, correct? Our Fine Arts Academy, our STEM Academy, encompassing for the middle school.
No, sir. This specifically, which you see at the bottom for CTE, it's only for
Right,
South
no.
San.
That was gonna be- The first question was regarding the middle school specifically. The enrollment and the student to teacher ratio that includes the academies and those schools.
No, sir.
So they're separate. So
Yes, sir. If you take a look at the elective student teacher ratios, you see
Okay.
those. So those differ there. And then those specifically speak to only South San. Yes, sir.
And then going back to the CTE, definitely I was able to go back and you had some data, your weekly update in December and January, and coincidentally you brought up the well. Just an example, we had 66 ninth graders, right, and it dropped down to 25 10th graders, 5 graders. So I guess the data would tell us the 65 to 25, where did those kids go? Did they choose another pathway? Did they not take the pathway? That's an important. I would like to know. That's an important piece of decision making process. Was it the course? Is it just not interesting? Did they not finish class? Or, that would play into my consideration on.
Sure. I'm sure there will be multi reasons as to why, and we can definitely capture that and come back. I know in working closely alongside Mr. Gallardo, even for this elective process, it allowed us to know where we're heading for this upcoming year and where we have been previously in the past as well. So I'm glad that you pointed that out, Mr. Rodriguez, and you took the time to review that, because it does. It is very telling. And now how do we collect data or just background, whether it's a survey, end of the year evaluation, what is it that we're capturing on that end? And I couldn't answer that generically for us this evening, but we can definitely come back with some of that feedback specifically at the high school and then from our CTE department and what we've captured in years past. Moving forward, what I have learned just in again this year is, and I've had this conversation with Mrs. Prado before, is we've had the tendency of adding programs or adding, but not coming back to potentially analyzing or taking time to run that needs assessment and then making a decision there moving forward. Lots of great opportunities that we do offer, but definitely now rethinking about how is it that we can consider this program, unfortunately, over another one in the best interest of our student body.
I mean, to me, just one more thing. If we have 66, and I'm just using welding because it's the one that stood out to me.
Yes, sir.
We have 66 ninth graders that are filling out that choice, at 8th grade, filling out that choice slip. And then if we remove welding from there, for as an example, and you put a different
you know.
Where would they go?
Where would they go?
Oh, absolutely.
right? So,
No, I agree.
I just see a steep decline there.
Yes.
Where, you know, it wasn't what I thought it was gonna be or whatever the case may be.
Yes, sir.
Or I picked this because they didn't have this. And then now if we do have that choice, that, you know.
Right.
But definitely something that we would need to dig deeper into to make those decisions. Sure.
Do we have, if I may ask a question? Mr. Depaul, I know the elective data here, the student teacher ratio, that includes the academy. Do we have a breakdown of how many students in each academy?
Yes, ma'am. We provided that in one of the reports. It's been a little bit, Mrs. Bello. We can circle back and get that over to you just so that you can have the latest update on that, because that took place during like the November, December time. We have that.
Because I think kids tend to maybe drop and say, this
Yes.
is not for me, and go back to the regular.
The general
school.
zone, yes.
That's right. So I think that would
Sure.
be interesting to see how those numbers, if they've changed any.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It just gets me excited where we have.
It just gets me excited where we have the potential to grow maybe at the elementary level and expand on our choice academies and actually drive where they go. You know, well, I'm here at the middle school level. They're not offering it at high school level now. Well, I guess I'll choose this, and then they get a year of it, and I'm like, it's not for me. I mean, you know, so. But sorry to interrupt.
I get excited about these.
I think there are many towns that, you know, they can compare themselves out. You know, I was a woodworker in high school, took 4 years, I loved it, still use every bit of it. I've trained one of those years to know how to weld.
Yeah, sure.
So,
Right.
you know, there are some great course offerings out there.
Right. Sure. Mine, again, it's always about opportunity, but what an opportunity because of the academies, and then of course what is at the high school. What is just a pile of opportunity here is a strategic plan district-wide, so that it is now speaking to pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. It is allowing that platform to come together and be able to do something to that magnitude. And I mean, of course, it would take the efforts of all our schools working together to really see what that vision looks like. And I think of 3-year or 5-year type of plan to get us there moving forward.
If I may, just a quick observation / question. For the secondary schools, we have elective all grouped together. And what I'm curious about is electives aren't always the same. For example, if you're looking at an athletics elective, your student ratios might look really different, and there might be some reasons why the ratios look the way that they do. And then I'm assuming like world languages get lumped into electives. Am I correct with that? And I'm very leery sometimes of viewing world languages as elective because it's required for college admissions. So for a certain group of students, it's a 5th core because they can't get admissions into college without 3 or maybe even 4 years of language under their belt. And then of course there's performing arts. So where do our band kids fit in here? And the teacher ratio for band sometimes gets really skewed. So I'd be curious to see how that affects what the elective quote unquote student to teacher ratio is, and if it really shows what we think it shows when we throw them all together sometimes.
And Mr. Raskow, here in June, Mo Casey will be presenting, and that is something that is, again, very telling when you have numbers and they do tell a story. I had this side conversation with Mr. Rodriguez about sometimes when you have this type of information, it generalizes, but it doesn't really give you the back end of what is truly purposely happening. That could be an exception because of what you just shared. So it's also being mindful of that to say, oh, okay, this looks like this, but no, this is something that we need based on whatever elective that is. And electives by far is one that really takes that, just depending on what the interest is based on our students. But with that being said, of course, there are some areas that we do have to revisit and really need to consider other options at this time. That we know, and that should be happening here in the near future.
Gotcha.
One other measure that we try to look at One other metric that we try to look at is the number of students that a teacher impacts over the course of the day. And we'll talk about a Spanish teacher that may see, in block schedules, you have to do some synthesizing, but a Spanish teacher may see 240 students over the course of a day. And then you have a French teacher that might only see 37 because of the migration of those French students into one of the career and technology clusters. And so, it's easy for the elementary to look at 22 to 1, and then you multiply that 22 times 7 periods, and you end up with 154 kids, I think is what that is, that they impact over the course of the day. And we need to ensure that our secondaries, that there are enough people availing themselves of those course opportunities. I go back to my college philosophy class. I walked in one day and there were 3 people in the class with me. I'm like, man, this isn't a very popular class. And it was so unpopular that the instructor stood up and said, I apologize, but this class is not going to make. Y'all need to go, you need to go re-register and take something else. So again, we can't be that prescriptive, but we need to be looking at our trend analytics and making good staffing and course offering decisions.
As I said, we might have shared a little more, but I hope that this helped just to give you the big picture of where we are and what's to come.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then exactly where it shouldn't be is the summary document on page 2 of the statement there, the observations. These are just that. They're observations. They are, potential decision points. The first item you have on here, Athens has 20 Head Start students. Okay, 20 is the max. Do we consider offering another Head Start section there to try to feed growth? It's just a question, but there are lots of observations in here. Again, the pink is where that we could have a potential collapse of a section. But the percentage on there, just looking at Athens could add 85 students to their campus and not impact their staffing model. Now, granted, they would have to be in the right classroom, but that's 85 seats that we are giving up because of efficiency. You go down, Benavides could add 84. Five Palms, one of our largest campuses, could add 101 students and not impact their staffing model. Hutchins could add 118. Price could add 75. So there's lots of opportunity for us to grow. This is not addressing the building footprint, but it is addressing our classroom footprint.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Baum. Committee members, are there any further questions? So that covered items A and B, correct? Great. Okay, moving on to item number 2, the workers' compensation update. Ms. Alejo?
Yes, sir. Thank you. We do have a follow-up, and Mr. Baum has it. He's going to be popular this evening.
Yes, of course. Yes, our workers' comp balance has been it's been pretty easy to talk about because it's been high, and I don't know the full history of it. I know that we are not currently funding workers' comp from a budgetary standpoint because we do have a sizable reserve. I know we have reached into those reserves before, but we're getting to that point where we're not hugely overfunded. But my concern is that at some point we're going to have to jump back in and start budgeting from a placeholding standpoint, if nothing else. I think we're going to have some challenges within our health plan this year. We're right there on the kind of the break-even point. And, you're just one claim away from going the wrong direction on that. So workers' comp could support that plan a little bit, but it could provide a Band-Aid at best, but we are going to need to get back into the realm of budgeting for our workers' comp. It's not hugely expensive. We don't have a great number of claims, but our auditors have recommended that we keep $1 million on hand for catastrophic claims, and then there is a run out as well. So just as something that we'll want to keep an eye. Our expenditures to date for 19 and 20 are $257,000. in projected expenditures through year end to be an additional 76,000. This is just internal staff. There's no IBNR. There's no actuarial soundness to this. We are asking people like me to make projections on something that we're really not qualified to do, but we are trending that out. So there's not a person on our finance team that would want to stake their job on an estimation. It just, if you don't believe it, just go ask the question. And Ms. Claudita, she is amazing in so many ways. And I asked her to project, and she's like, "You're really not asking me to project." I'm like, "Well, just make a projection, and we'll put lots of caveats and whatnot around it." But there are some opportunities from a reserve standpoint there, but they're not great. And I think that was the nature of the question. What does our workers' comp fund balance look like? What are the claims on it, and what kind of reserves do we need to have in place? If we reserve $600,000 for claims and $1 million for reserves, we would have a surplus of $600,000. But that being said, with no additional funding, the $600,000 would likely be needed the following budget year. And I apologize for not digging deeper into this. I certainly will put something together. One of the things about these questions, we want to answer the questions, but we also want to provide wraparound documentation, because if we're counting on y'all to ask the exact question that we need to answer all the time, we're in trouble. So I do need to gather some more information and look at historical claims, because I can tell you that we're at 257 this year and we project another 76, but that's less than 350,000. Guarantee you we've had years that have been bigger than 350,000. Guarantee we will have years that are greater than 350,000. So some more analytics need to be done there, but I did want to report on the balance there.
Thank you for that, Ms. Long. Yes, Ms. Barrow.
I was going to wait because I had Mr. Rodriguez had submitted some questions previously that got answered in our backup information, but I had submitted follow-up questions, although albeit, I did mention that they went in on Sunday, so I didn't know if there was going to be enough time for Ms. and her staff to submit answers. But one of the questions really was basically what you're talking about. And if you'll permit, I was hoping that it would be shared with the budget committee, my questions, so that we could discuss it. But I did make copies of my questions, and if it's all right, Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes,
can
ma'am.
I share it with you?
Yes, ma'am, please.
So my follow-up questions to Mr. Rodriguez is, there were some really good answers, and on these questions, it took a lot of work, but it was very helpful. So I submitted follow-up questions to a couple of those that I just handed out there, and Mr. Baum was just now talking about the workman's comp, and that was one of my follow-up questions that I had as well. And if you'll just bear with me.
I want letterhead paper.
So I did, let me just flip through here real quick. I know it's here. I kept mine. But I wanted to go over the questions, and then I did a little notation. Here they are. If you'll bear with me, let me go ahead and just go over my questions that I submitted. Ms. Deco, I appreciate your staff making the effort. I know you've been inundated with all kinds of things, and time probably ran out, but I'm hoping that I can get some of these responses. The question that I had on Mr. Rodriguez was on question number 1. Since we are still considering the tax subsidy fund inclusive of the Fund 199, hopefully we can get that fixed at some point. What was the balance in the tax subsidy fund at the time that the board approved the $1.165 million in improvements for West Campus High School? And you don't have to answer it now, but I just want to kind of give you the questions that I was asking, and then I'll get my answers. The quarterly investment report that's dated February 22nd, 2020, which is the last quarterly report that we got, noted a balance in the tax subsidy fund of $1.816 million. So my question is, if there are differing balances, could someone explain to me what is the difference? What is the balance today of the tax subsidy fund? That was one of my follow-up questions, and that was to Mr. Rodriguez as number 1. on question number 2 that Mr. Rodriguez had submitted. In the summer of 2019, the previous administration and the board were considering the approval of the 1920 proposed budget. Specifically, the board had directed the administration to present a balanced budget, which is probably what we'll do this year as well. 2 proposals were presented, one from administration and one from the board. Surprisingly, both proposals were very similar, and I think Mr. Rodriguez will remember that. The CFO's proposal included the elimination of 14 FTE classroom teacher positions that were present in the proposed budget but had not been filled. Therefore, there were vacant slots. There were other vacant positions recommended for elimination, and if those positions, if you can find them in the budget workshop number 5, which was dated August 14, 2019, and I have my copy here, but I'm not going to share it with you. But it is in the budget workshop number 5, it lists all those positions, it has it there. The approximate cost savings of these FTE classroom teaching positions and the other positions was $1.234 million. That was the cost savings. But one board member at that time expressed a concern about eliminating these positions. Therefore, the board left these positions in the adopted budget. From the day the 2019-2020 budget was approved until today, my question is, how many of these FTE classroom teacher positions, as well as the other positions, still exist in the 1920 budget? If some of the FTE classroom teachers were filled, if those slots were filled, as well as the other positions, I wanted them to be indicated which ones and to what campus and department were they assigned, because I'm assuming some of those were already filled. So the 14 that we had probably is no longer 14. Therefore, that savings, I'm sure, has dwindled down. So that was the question, the follow-up question to his number 2. The other follow-up question was to number 11. And that is, it's my understanding that in addition to the approximately $2.6 million CARES Act stimulus funding that our district has been allocated, the school districts we can be reimbursed up to 75% for pandemic-related expenses. Would the meals prepared for our food service department for students and families during the COVID pandemic be eligible for reimbursement? And what about food services personnel who are working in this relief program? Would their salaries be eligible for reimbursement? And do we know the approximate cost incurred by a school district during this relief program? Because it's my understanding districts are keeping track of what the expenditures are, how much they're spending, having to do with the pandemic and supplies that we have to buy, sanitations and stuff. So I think I hope we're keeping track of that.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so I think all the districts are. So districts are going to be reimbursed for some of that. So that was my other follow-up question. And then on question number 12, does the quarterly investment report dated February 29, 2020, does that indicate an ending asset value of $2,723,144.71 for the Workman's Comp Fund? And it does not, what is the estimated asset value and why? If the year-to-date expenditures for 2019-2020 are $257,000, which you just had mentioned, an additional projected expenditure of $76,000, which you just also projected, would the total expenditures for 1920 be $333,000? And I think you'll agree those two add up to $333,000. So have there been any catastrophic claims for the 2019-2020 school year? Are there any pending catastrophic claims for the 2019-2020 school year? Because that's important. That's why we put aside the $1 million in case there's claims. And you said something when you were explaining this, something about there could be something pending. So I'm thinking, is there something out there maybe that could be a catastrophic claim that may be coming to us before August, before the end of the year. I don't know. So those are my questions. And that's why, since you brought it up, I said, well, let me give it to Jeff. And so those were the only questions I have. And I'm sure at some point when Ms. Sendejo has time, I'll get my answers on that. But I wanted to, I made a notation. I don't normally make a notation at the end of my questions, but I felt this was really, really important. And I'd like to read that. Mr. Rodriguez's questions and the responses by staff have a potential for cost savings. The refining questions I have submitted serve the same purpose, cost savings. The staff at our budget committee meeting submitted a needs assessment totaling over $7 million at various campuses, other than Athens, other than Kazan, other than West Campus, and other than Olivares. That's been done. I believe it's time to demonstrate that we do care about those other campuses. Parents in the community have seen the improvements in Athens. They were elated to see not only the schools open, but the improvements that were done. They were done very well. Everyone was really excited at Athens, Kazan, West Campus. And then when they see our beautiful Olivares and how much has been done there, I think they're really going to be happy. I hope they understand that we're honoring a commitment of a wrong that was done when we opened this campus, those campuses. I've done a lot of interacting with my parents and of course, staff members and employees, because they have a right to come and talk to us, and believe me, they do, since the beginning of the year. And I've come to the conclusion that we must dedicate funds to the other schools for improvements. I sense the patience is waning among parents and community members, and now they want to see improvements at their children's school. I believe if we can fund at least 1/3 of the $7 million, which is $2.3 million, it will go a long way in restoring trust, confidence, and goodwill in our community. We need to show something. I feel confident that we can do this without using any of the $2.6 million from the CARES Act. I know that there's certain things you can use that for, or using any amount from our general fund balance. I think we can do it. For instance, the staff has indicated that replacing HVAC units at Benavides Elementary would cost $1.3 million. So, however, that cost involves numerous HVAC units. In fact, I think Ms. Sendejo did send me the list, the breakdown of how many HVACs. I think Benavides has like 63 units. That's why it's coming over to over $1 million at least. Some of these campuses have a lot of units. I could never understand that. My house has one. Why do we have so many units? Anyway, if we break down that need, one will ascertain that the most important need are the HVACs that service the gym. People have told me the gym does not have HVAC at Benavides. That is crucial, especially to this coming school year, because the heat is coming. The summer has already started, and it can get very hot in those gyms. We have had gyms that have had to use big fans because they didn't have HVAC. Now, not all of our gyms have HVAC or air conditioning. Some were built without the air conditioning, so they've been using those big fans. But Benavides is an air-conditioned gymnasium. It's attached to the school, if I'm not mistaken. So we need to have those units fixed. I don't know how many units. I would think at least 2 maybe that would cover the gym area. Not 63, that's for sure. So, and I don't know what the cost would be, but I think if we divvy up the money so every campus gets something done, I think we can get that done. And we can get it done before school starts. Because if the board takes this into consideration and breaks down this money, and if we can find the 2.3 million, we need to get that ordered right away so that the staff or the company can come in and install those units at the gym before school starts in August. Because parents complain if their kids are hot or if it's cold. Believe me, they'll come knocking at your door. So I think that's one thing that we need to do. The kids at Benavides, as I said, their school will begin and they ought to have a serviceable gym. There are other student activities that are held in our gyms other than PE, and I know you haven't had a chance to go, I don't think, but they have awards ceremony in the gyms. They have recognitions, they have graduations sometimes in the gyms. So it's not used just for PE. So I think it's vital that we get that done as soon as possible. We can stretch the dollars in the same manner at each of the other schools. In the case of Benavides, we could order the HVAC units come June and have them here and operational before school starts. Some improvements must occur now before school begins, and the other improvements must be budgeted to accomplish during the school year. The goal should be that every elementary and middle school, other than Athens, Kazan, West Campus, and Olivares, should realize an improvement, some improvement. We can do this. Let us work together in this endeavor. I think it can be done. Now, I know Mr. Baum is sitting there thinking, where in the heck is she going to get that money?
He's waiting for you to take your checkbook out of your.
Right? Where is she going to come up with that money? If you remember, we had a board meeting and Mr. Flores wanted to do the Veterans Memorial. He jumped up and said, I'll be the chairman, I'll take charge, I'll do it. He's a one-man committee as far as I know right now. He's taking charge of that memorial. So I would like to take that challenge to find the money, the 2.3 million, because I think I can find it. And this way we can divvy up we can't do all the projects, it's impossible, but we can do pieces and bits and pieces. But Ms. Sendejo has been providing me a lot of information on the roofs, on the HVACs, on the square footage. And I've had to go back to look at the needs committee, what those are, because some of the roofs are just a certain percentage, it's not the whole roof, and then compare it to see, okay, well, it's only so many square feet. But it's a challenge, and I think I can do it. So I need the committee. We need to do this somehow. I can do it if I'm told to. If Mr. Rasco wants to be a part of my endeavor here to try and fund the money, I'd be happy to have him work with me. But we also need to work with Ms. Sendejo and your staff on finding out which other projects, like Benavides, we know it's the gym. And some of the others also, their projects are like over $1 million, and I have the list here with me. But I'm sure if we focus on those that are really, really need to be placed now, we can probably get that done. Now, I understand there's lifespans. HVAC has a lifespan. Superintendents have lifespan. Their lifespan at a district is 3 years.
We've never had an HVAC.
Wait a minute.
Last time the superintendent.
Well, I wanted to chuckle a little bit about this. HVACs have lifespans, and on the list that Ms. Sendejo has shared, I see where it shows some of them are 2024, some are 2017, some are 2001, 2002. I get it, I understand that. But if you have a good maintenance department and you maintain those units, even at your home, if you maintain it, change the filter, get the service in twice a year, do it, that's going to go longer than your lifespan. Maybe a year, maybe 2. So there are some that need it now, and it says it on there. And there's some that, okay, the lifespan is 2024, we could probably go another year or 2. So I don't see us needing to do all 7 million right now, but I think there's an urgent need to do some right now before school starts. And like I said, I'd like to take that challenge, Mr. Rodriguez, and if the committee would allow me to find money, I've got all the reports and everything. I think I can find it, and because it's got to be approved by the board, it's not something that we can do as a committee here. And allow me to come up with the funds and a breakdown of the projects, if I can work with Ms. Sendejo and whoever's in charge of the projects to say, okay, this is Benavides, we're on here is the gym, how much the unit's gonna cost, because I know that staff knows what the cost of the units are. We've done a lot of dealing with Train, with Rude, with all these other companies, and right now there's so many different companies, you know, and there's no consistency in a company to come in and do our AC or HVAC units. So I'm asking if the committee would consider letting me work with the superintendent to come up with monies and come back with the projects that we can do now with that 2.3 million and then present it to the board on the 17th so they can get working on that. So that's my spiel. I know I can do it. And I'll work with Jeff Baum too.
Well, you have held my attention longer than any human being in my 50 years old. Congratulations. That's serious.
I saw you. You were like this.
I heard every single word that you said.
I know you did.
We have prepared a lot of the answers. And you're correct, they do dovetail in with what Mr. Rodriguez asked. The first piece, and I hate to lead with bad news, but
Okay.
the CARES Act money is not going to be new money.
Right.
We're in a situation where the ESSER portion of the CARES Act is a grant that we have to apply for, and we will get it. And the money
That's
will
right.
come in as federal money. But unfortunately, we are going to have our general revenue reduced.
Yeah.
If we get $2.7 million of CARES money, we are going to lose $2.7 million in state money.
And say funding? Really?
Yes. And
Well,
that
how
is-
come they don't say that?
Well, you know, and we continue to get new updates on it every day, every week. There is a big training on June the 11th. So 9 days from now, we'll learn a lot before we ever get to that training. But thank you so much. There were step 1 and 2, and we talked about our calculation for ADA, how we would do that with the absence of student data from the 5th and 6th weeks, and we would index it based on what happened last year. And we walked through that when we were making a prediction for what ADA was going to be. There was a third bullet that later got added to that on May 28th. As a matter of fact, we received clarification on May the 28th that our state revenue we would see a reduction in our ADA calculation to offset the CARES money. So I would love to see $2.3 million to begin chipping away. And the sole reason that I brought up those projects, the near-term capital needs, the sole reason I brought those up was so we could start placeholding in our budget as we went forward, because we've not done and I'll own that. I'm not part of that history, but I know that we can be part of the solution going forward. We have got to start adding money to our budget that is there and empowering the people that are in charge of those programs to make decisions. Yeah, it's really inexcusable that we're in the shape that we're in from a deferred maintenance standpoint with our facilities. The $7+ million that we mentioned, unfortunately, that was from a 2015 study.
Yes.
And a full 5-year-old study. And so, you know, we've tried to freshen up the cost, but we've not identified a tremendous number of additional projects. That's part of the TASB facility study that we're going to do. And I think the $7 million will pale in comparison to what we get to. But I am super appreciative of you being willing to take that on, and I'll stand beside you and take those things on. But we need a lot of help, and the CARES money is not going to be it.
No, and I think I had said that, and that's exactly what I said. Without even not even going into the CARES Act, I know that is, I've read on the Tribune, it tells you exactly what it can be used for. And you cannot use it for facilities. So I understand that. So it would not impact the CARES Act. It's not even going to impact the general fund. But I will find you $2.3 million to get some of those projects working now, because we need fixes now. We can't wait once you start chipping away, like you said, a little bit, it's time to get them done. And we can do it if we start now.
And I have been party to a lot of HVAC projects in my career, and to get something done inside of 90 days that we have not allocated money for, that we have not planned for, the line of people to get HVAC put in their schools right now extends from here to Del Rio. It is a lengthy line, and we do need to identify that as a priority. And that may be something that we have to do at the beginning of the year. I would love to open the doors with some projects done. I think we will have failed if we don't get some things taken care of.
And the other thing I wanted to touch was, I'm very responsible when it comes to our tax dollars, because that's hard-earned money that our taxpayers spend. And we spent a lot of money to get these schools open and to make them viable, and we've succeeded within budget. But now it's time to get back to the other campuses, and we need to start now. We can't wait. There's a lot of work that has to be done. I have that feasibility study, and the comment that I wanted to make is 2 administrators prior did an assessment and was presented to the budget, we have a budget committee, to the board on our budget workshops. And they had everything on there, and not one item on that list had anything to do with HVACs, with roofs, nothing. It was all classroom style, nothing. They never presented anything to us to say, we need these additional monies to fund for next year. It was on a emergency basis whenever something was done. That's how it was brought to us.
Even in our current budget, it's that way. We have not empowered a director or executive director with an amount of money to go solve projects. Every single project has to come before this board, and there's a pecking order, and there's never enough money. So the problem is systemic. It's not on one single person. It's not on one single administration. It's not on one single board. We've got to up the ante. We've got to up our commitment to that. So I'll kind of try to carry these in tandem, but the amount of question number 1 was the amount of money that would be left over at the end of the year. Okay. And again, there are a lot of months, there are a lot of days left in this fiscal year for activity to occur.
If I may, Mr. Baum, I think I kind of want to get back in order, and we'll certainly revisit with the facilities, but I wanted to touch on the workers' comp item that we're currently on. I certainly agree with everything, with your assessment, with your explanation. And I certainly agree that at some point we need to start contributing and budgeting to our, because we're self-funded, right? So we need to budget for that. I don't know if this coming budget year is the time that we should. That's probably something that we need to consider a little bit more. But certainly, there's what you just assessed is the opportunity that I saw it myself, and then seeing the current claims, and then pending claims, and then there's a little bit of wiggle room there. We certainly want to be protected, right? We want to protect ourselves and be vigilant, right? Be on our toes and be proactive. But as far as contributing to our self-funded workers' comp, yes, we do. Is it this coming budget? I think that it may not be. I think we probably need to have a few more discussions regarding that. But there's certainly opportunity there, like you described, which was my rationale for asking that particular question. And you're right. We have visited this issue, this topic, this item previously with the previous board, and we have moved monies from the workers' comp to fund a couple of projects. Yes, we did. But I think we're in a comfortable position right now, aside from making a decision on when we're going to start contributing again to our self-funded workers' compensation fund. And then I think you were going to move next to the funding update. That was going to lead us into the expenditures, right? So,
I would just say this, Mr. Rodriguez.
yes, sir.
On the
Workers' comp reserves. You're never going to find a banker that says he has too much collateral, and you're never going to find a risk manager that says he has too large of a reserve. Okay, and yes, we do have a good reserve in our workers' comp. We have no reserve in our health plan, and our health plan is a $6.5 million enterprise with no reserves, and the workers' comp is Rudy Poot compared to that. So I appreciate the dialogue, and we'll dig into that and make sure we have full disclosure. As far as catastrophic claims, I'm not aware of any that are on the book, but catastrophic is also subjective. What is the amount that's catastrophic? So we'll count on trend data with knowing that there is always the possibility of something could come. And then we have stop loss on top of that. So we'll flesh that out. But I did want to speak to the balance. And yes, it seems like there is some cushion there, and I would grant you that there is some, but it's not a great amount of cushion. So great opportunity as it relates to question number one and the balances that we have. You will see that we are looking at, and it's just an estimate. And these are human beings that are making these estimates, very skilled human beings, but they're human. But our best guess at this point is that we would have about $2.8 million left over in the budget. And I totally get the concept of a balanced budget. We absolutely need to do that. We have downgraded revenue over the course of the year. We have also added because of construction expenditures, et cetera, et cetera. So we know there's a huge counterbalance there, but the monies that are set forth in the budget, we see that there's about $2.8 million that we will have left over at the end of the year, provided we meet our revenue estimate. So we are encouraged by that. How did that happen? You know, I think each one of us will have found that through this pandemic that we have dealt with, we have had trouble spending money that we normally would have spent. I think I know there's been a lot of job loss and people have been harmed, but if you just look at the outflows of the family, they have been less than the same period last year. I can virtually assure you we've experienced some of that as a district as well. We have had premium pay that we have paid on top of what we would normally pay, but we know we're going to get reimbursed. We've got the FEMA bucket, we've got the CRF, the Coronavirus Relief Fund bucket, and then we've got that ESSER bucket, the $2.7 million that Ms. Prado spoke to. So we are taking a backwards approach, and we are going to get reimbursed every single dollar that we can. But as we talked internally as to how to handle the pandemic that we've dealt with, our number one statement has been take care of our kids. Whatever it is, we'll sort the money out. Let's take care of our kids. That's what we're here for. And I think we've done that, and we will go back and we will retroactively seek the reimbursements that we can. As Ms. Prado mentioned, the CARES money cannot be used for facilities. Well, we've got other money we can use for facilities if that was new money, but it's not new money. It's not additional money. So we can't do and it's very flexible other than facilities. It's if you're taking care of your educational operations and you are retaining employees that you might not have retained otherwise, there's lots of flexibility built in. The only problem is it's a different pot of money. It's not a new pot of money, and we're losing other money. So the fund balance analysis, I want to give you a couple of other documents that dovetail in with this.
While you're passing it out, Mr. Baum, I just want to add on to what you just said. Certainly, Ms. Prado can speak to it. We lived it. The budget process last year was, hindsight's 2020, and looking back at the pain points and the process that we went through, I'm proud of the work that we did, because had we not, we probably would be in a deeper hole than we are now. But the point is that you're right. If we know that we're doing the right thing for the right reasons, ultimately for our kids and our employees, then we'll take the scars, right? And we'll collaborate and we'll put our heads together, and we'll keep it inside these walls here, because the good stuff is what filters down to the kids in the classroom. So, and we certainly want to be transparent with our community, when we do that. But I feel the exact same way you do, is if we all can sit here collectively and have these conversations and make these tough decisions and be able to go home at night and say, I think our kids are better off today and they'll be better off tomorrow. Then that's all. I think it's the only thing. So I certainly appreciate your alignment in that. So, yes, sir.
Into the fund balance conversation. We talk about there being $2.8 million of unexpended budget at the end of the year, but I want to hit on the tax subsidy analytics for just a second and focus on the one that's titled tax subsidy analytics. Focus on the top half of the page there, if you will. And these are actual transactions to date. Okay, these are things that none of us can argue with because we've experienced them. We've seen them come through. We know that there was an audited balance on the tax subsidy of $1.786 million. That is written in our audit that amount of tax subsidy existed on August 31st. The very first thing we did in 1920 when we adopted the budget was we budgeted $246,000 of that tax subsidy money for projects. And so what happens is, in fund balance really only matters the last day of the year. That's the only date you'll ever see auditors documented as the last day of the year. But we want to track it because it resonates with people what those reserves look like. We took $246,000 from that subsidy money day one in our budget. Now, it was part of a balanced budget, but we earmarked it as subsidy monies and spent those monies. We then made it a budget amendment in February for $955,000, which reduced it down to $584,000. We received interest. I said April interest received. It was really April year to date. Those were all of the interest monies that had been received through April of $22,000, which bumped it up to $606,000. We received a payment in May of $484,000, which raised it up to $1,090,000. And then we did a budget amendment at the recent board meeting for $1.165 million, which would indicate, if you were looking at it from a balance standpoint, there was $74,000 in the red on that. That's what our books indicate. That's not reality. Okay. Now then the second part of the page, this is accurate position reflecting subsidy data only. So these are the things that have really impacted our subsidy money. And there were some insurance proceeds that we received that got added to subsidy money. If we're going to call it subsidy money and we're going to sequester it and we're going to track it with a local code of 21, it needs to be subsidy money. It doesn't need to be interest. It doesn't need to be insurance reimbursement. It needs to be subsidy money. You track the monies that come in on subsidy, you track the monies that go out. Well, in looking at this, and this took some digging by staff to get to this. In August of 2018, we received subsidy payments, 2 separate payments totaling $480,000, which would have taken that $1.7 million up to 2.3 almost, right? Well, in looking at that, we had put the 1.7 million took into consideration $203,000 of insurance proceeds, which were not subsidy money. So I would assert that should come out. Those are not subsidy dollars. That was an insurance claim that happened at Athens, I believe. $600,000 total that we received. We only received $203,000 at that point. So that would lower the subsidy balance. And then that 1920 initial budget that we see for construction line items would reduce it another $200,000. The February budget amendment would in fact reduce it another $955,000. The April interest received, and I've got a balance tracker over there so you can see what's happening with the balance as you go. April interest increases it. The May payment of $483,000 increases it. The May budget amendment decreases it. Then so where we sit today with subsidy, there is even with the last amendment that we did, there is $201,000 sitting there in subsidy money. We should earn about $5,000 between now and the close of the fiscal year, and then we should receive another payment of $480,000 in August for the August payment, which The amount we see in our audit should be somewhere around $686,000. Okay, and so that amount will be reflected in the audit of tax subsidy money. So it is tracking. And if it doesn't look like this, then we need some splaining, right? But that's the way that I see it. So if you look at the second page that I gave you, it's overall fund balance analysis. Okay. And the very first line you see on there, fund balance as of August 31st, 2019 is $4 million. Okay. That's what our auditor stood here and told us. You have fund balance of $30.4 million. The non-subsidy of that, or the unassigned portion, is $28.6 million. The subsidy portion is $1.7 million. The budget that we entered the year, that actually decreased the subsidy dollars available, and it was just a flip-flop. So that decreased the subsidy money, increased the non-subsidy money, but no net change on our fund balance. So there was zero impact on that. And then we had the amendment for restoration of cuts, the $1.1 million that occurred in the regular board meeting. Did not impact subsidy. It did impact non-subsidy and the compensatory amount or corresponding amount on the general fund balance. The February amendment, there is that $955,000 reduction in subsidy. There was a $1.8 million reduction in the non-subsidy for a total of $2.7 million. So I won't go through each one of these and look, but you get down to the bottom, and you see that you see that interest of $5,000. You see that payment. There were additional Athens insurance proceeds received this year, $388,000. Those were just recognized as revenue. Those will go into the general fund balance. They are not tax subsidy monies. Now, if we want to give them a name and set them aside, I am great with that. But if we are going to restrict and we are going to set aside tax subsidy, it needs to maintain its status as tax subsidy monies, not commingled with everything else, as we have talked about. So the estimated general fund surplus in the current year, $2.8 million, that would make our estimated year-end fund balance that the auditors will stand here and tell you, and it's not going to be this, okay? There's a lot of sausage to be made between now and the time that the auditors stand here in January, right? Yes, please, and I'll initial it. I don't mind at all. But the estimated year-end fund balance is $27.2 million. Of that, 26.5 is non-subsidy and 686,000 is subsidy money. We can take that, as Mr. O'Hanlon said, we can move that to a restricted fund and keep it off to the side. But if we take that 686,000 out of its current nomenclature identified with local code 21, then our year-end fund balance would then go to 26.5 million from 27.2. So I just wanted to walk through that and get you to that point, and then show that we've still got those other two projects that we have not determined. Are we using fund balance? Are we going to use next year's budget? How's that going to happen? But I think it's important that we know that they're there. But that is, does that clarify subsidy?
Let me share with you what we used to get when we would ask for a running total of our subsidy. This is yours, and this is what we were getting. It was nothing. I mean, we weren't.
You tell me what you prefer, and I will make sure you have it. I mean that.
So I thank you. This is exactly the tracking that we need, and I thank you for going to all the trouble to doing this. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
This isn't awesome. I think that this is phenomenal. This clear, at least for me anyway, the muddy water, right? That the perception of it being muddied, right? So, yeah, this is definitely it's not the end all be all. It's not the solving all of our needs or anything, but it certainly brings clarity to a lot of the questions, a lot of the just thank you. I'm not gonna go there. I'm gonna stay here and we're gonna go forward. We're determined. Just, thank you for all your hard work. And I caught it when you said that it took some digging, it took some work from the staff to kind of find this stuff and kind of, it was there. It was just a matter of identifying it and moving it probably, but the fact that you went to the extent of answering the question that has been asked, which feels like 1,000 years over, to finally have it answered and clarified is just phenomenal.
Well, unfortunately, we've not gotten the same answer. We answered it. We answered it for the last meeting, and then we worked on it a little more. We worked on the stands. I will just tell you this: you cannot feel clarity without clarity.
There you go. Wow, that's a good one. Yeah, and I actually reached out to her and I said, "Can you have this?" Because you spoke to it, and I said, "Can you have this kind of summarize in a memo or something to the budget committee everything that he said?" Well, here it is. So, this is, just a lot of hard work. I can imagine a lot of blurry eyes, probably, blurred vision, probably. So, but thank you very much. This is phenomenal. Thank you, Ms. Nejo. Thank you, Ms. Palm, and thank you to the whole finance team, everybody who took part, and thank you, Ms. Prado, for her persistence. As usual, she knows exactly what she's talking about, right? So thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Baum, I guess what I'm hearing is
While you get back, okay, go ahead.
Sorry. I guess what I'm hearing now is we have clarified the tax subsidy fund issue identification. So now it will have a number. Is that correct? It's a restricted fund and it will be identified as so with its own number. Is that something that's going to happen? We're going to fix that?
We will not deny him. Michelle, stop muting me. It has. We will work with Mr. O'Hanlon and figure out the mechanism for making that a restricted fund. Just want y'all to know that it will reduce our fund balance in doing it. And we can absolutely get that moved over. But I wanted to recognize, the August payment of 2018 were not coded with the 21. We've got that mechanism in place. It wasn't coded.
Okay.
The insurance proceeds were coded. Both of them are incorrect. We want to correct that and get that straight moving forward, and we'll give you whatever report you want on it.
Thank you, Mr. Baum. Is Mr. Hanlon, are you there? Do we know, Mr. Baum, why we only got 200,000 on the insurance claim rather than the 600,000?
Yes, ma'am. If you look, there was an additional payment that came this year. It was split between last year and this year. Last year we received 203,891. This year we received 388 for a total of 592,332.
So we did get reimbursed then, just in separate payments?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And that's not a surprise. But when you're dealing with insurance claims, there's a couple of ways to handle it. You can file a claim and they can say, yes, we'll pay you, and you can book it as a receivable, show that it's coming in. It still may never show up.
Right.
It still may never, because they may go back and review the claim. And so it was just split between two fiscal years. We have been made whole on that claim.
Okay, and just one last question. On the CARES Act, has the guidance, has that said that money has to be spent this school year, or can it carry over to next school year?
It can actually, it crosses 2 grant years, and it has to be spent by September of 2021.
Okay, so next year.
Yep. But we've got to apply in June.
Right.
And we find you, and that's going to dictate what the payment is, and that's going to be the undoing of our EDA calculations.
The other thing that I heard and I read, and I'm concerned, is there was an article about, and the districts were upset, the districts having to share their money with the charter schools.
It's not the charters; it's a private nonprofit.
It's private nonprofit.
It's your private and parochial schools. And
We don't have any.
We have to, we have to know how it works. That's a
normal pullback of 5%. It's just a requirement.
Okay.
Because they don't, it's riding in equal access, piggybacking on you for services is what it comes down to. It might be the equivalent of you offering a training and extending their invitation. You know, your church, your private.
Right.
So it's not something that stays out of federal funds.
We already do that.
Okay, I think if the committee allows me to do this little project that I'd like to do, the second set of questions that I included that are breakdown, that will help a lot to decide on the projects and what's out there. So,
And just for clarification, I don't know, Mr. Rodriguez, if you're going to speak to this, because I did read the email you sent about the potential facilities committee.
Right.
So are you speaking to that? Is that where
Yes,
Ms.
ma'am. I'll get to that.
Perfect. Okay, good. I'll wait for you, and then we can chime in and make
Just
sure.
I think Mr. Russell has-
Yeah, just a quick question for Mr. Baum. So in the last budget committee, we got a fund balance analysis. And after phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, we were down to 19,899. And now this one, after phase 3, phase 4, it would bring us down to 24,107. So this is a more accurate reflection than the fund analysis from last time.
I will always give you updated documents and never give you something less accurate than the time before if I can control it. But that, in Mr. Rasco, that's the issue with trying to establish fund balance on X day. The insurance proceeds, the $388,000, we didn't have that in there.
Gotcha. So I'm actually really happy to see that our estimated unassigned fund balance at the year end has a significant uptick over what we were looking at. Just
It has an uptick with many caveats. And so let's talk about the $2.8 million. We talked about the difficulty in spending money during this epidemic. Those coffers are going to open back up, right? We know that we're going to be able to procure. We're going to have staff here. We're going to, have principals quantifying their needs. Our tutors that we had before, we haven't been able to pay them. So it's not that it's found money, it's balance that exists. And I know, and when you get ready to pose the question regarding staffing in the unfilled positions, you save money by not having a CFO this year, but there are a ton of non-monetary costs associated with that. Your finance director, your executive director, they're just, it's, you can save money, but we need some investment in the process, because we've got the very people that we have spoken of that have done yeoman's work here, they are struggling, and you won't hear them quantify it, but you can observe that they are struggling from having to do 2 and 3 jobs each. And it's just not sustainable. And that was my greatest concern when I came in here is Ms. Claudita is holding it together. Chad's holding it together. And then you have to understand that there's going to be some microfractures in there from jobs that are not being done. And they have stepped up, and they have done it with a smile on their face. They've been excellent soldiers, but it's unsustainable. And that's just one piece that I see evidence of. It's prevalent in HR. We need to be formulating recommendations as to how we can do it, and that staffing is just but one part of it. And we will look for efficiencies everywhere we can. I have never taken one single dollar from a district and stuck it in my pocket. I have tried to find efficiencies to fund the priorities that are identified by the people that know stuff other than dollars and cents. Business gets a lot of attention in schools, but what's important is that education piece, and we need to make sure that we're prepared to support them. And so I'll leave that there. So I am at your beck and call. I will continue on with any questions that you want to ask at this point.
No, that's certainly, Mr. Russell was
Is that the?
I know. I'm just excited to see that we're 4.2 million more estimated at the fund balance at the end of the year than we were earlier, which I find very heartening because I was starting to get concerned about that, and this helps alleviate some of that concern. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. How would you have any other questions? The next item on the agenda was I think now we're at number 3, right? The annual funding, the biannual funding update.
What are we even here talking about?
It was just one of the questions that you had, Mr. Rodriguez, on there, so and it was answered. Yes, sir, it was answered on page 11.
Yeah, so the legislature has, I'll speak to Dan Huberty in particular, has you know, kind of renewed his vow to schools to keep funding in place. You know, they're gonna go to every length that they can to keep education funding whole. But just by virtue of the fact that we're taking this CARES money and we are going to offset ADA loss, whether it exists or not, I have concerns as we go forward. They're on record as saying that they'll support funding in this biennium, but they're going to have the money in order to support it, and they're not going to throw in the towel yet. But I think that we need to be hyper vigilant and really hang on as we go through this.
Yeah, I'm glad that I asked that question and that item was on the agenda, because certainly, again, you know, the battle scar that we have from the last budget process, you know, between myself and Ms. Prado, I mean, we were. This is something that, you know, we just anticipated on. You know, is this going to be sustainable? Not. So, I mean, we thought it was going to be from a funding perspective. Where are they going to get the money from? And then this whole COVID just smacked us in the face, smacked everybody in the face, right? So it's you know, just having the conversations and being mindful of what could happen and make sure that we're prepared, right? And that we're looking down the road and we're anticipating what's coming around the corner. I think we find ourselves in the exact same situation because we don't know, like you just said, we don't know for sure. They say that we're hopeful and we're, you know, but we have to be prepared for that not to be the case. And I think we're on our way to making sure that from a budget perspective that we're prepared. So you know, just a lot of hard work, a lot of conversation, a lot of collaboration, a lot of decision making, ultimately resulting in a recommendation by this committee going up to the full board's consideration on you know, what we're going to do about our budget. So
the tough part is the student aspect. When I was a child, just as many of you were, the Joy Bus would come by and pick us up to take us to church, right, on that Wednesday night. And if we made it to church, we'd get 50 cents. If we brought a friend with us, we'd get a quarter for bringing that friend. And so, you know, I found all 8 friends that I had, and I walked out there with $2.50. You know, but if I didn't take any friends with me and I didn't show up, there wasn't any money there. So we are, you know, they can commit all the resources in the world to funding those kids, but if those kids aren't with us, we're not getting the money.
Right. Absolutely right. Going back to the questions that Ms. Sendejo referenced, yes, I know the budget committee members had a chance to read and assess the responses. Speaking to the staffing, the non-filled positions, I think we touched on that for a little bit. You know, last year, Ms. Prado mentioned one of the board members kind of wanting to keep those in place, but I've always been of the opinion of zero-based budgeting, right? If there's a need, let's identify it, let's justify it, let's put a number to it, and then let's get it approved, right? I think that's the most, in my opinion anyway, from a budget perspective, is the most responsible way and the most efficient way to establish a budget, right? It's not necessarily eliminating those positions. It's just let's come back when we have that need, right? Based on the superintendent's recommendation, let's put a dollar figure attached to it, and let's get it approved. It's just kind of like managing your own checkbook, right? I just find it to be more efficient way. So thank you for providing those responses. I know, like Ms. Prado said, I think we went down from 14 to whatever it is now. So there's a need there. Just make sure that we're being responsible and efficient when we fill those positions. The next item on the agenda was the 2019-2020 expenditure projections. Ms. Anejo?
Pretty.
Is that it?
We hit it.
Kind of went down to it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on that particular item, committee members?
I don't have, no, I go back to
Thank you. Going back to the request to research to see if we can find that money so we can start our projects, so that we can present something for the meeting in June so we can get working on this. Is that an action item? Do we have to authorize me to work with administration to do this, or how do we do that?
Well, it's a discussion of possible action. The last time we agenda is a facilities, right? So correct me if I'm wrong, the committee is charged with bringing forth recommendations and putting their analysis and data together that's going to forward a recommendation to the Board of Trustees for the consideration, right? Because at the end of the day, the full board needs to consider and take action on allocating those monies for whatever projects we deem based on the discussions and the collaboration need to get done, right? So I don't think that there needs to be a motion, and that's part of what we're charged with.
Okay.
Unless Mr. O'Hanlon is listening in and tells me otherwise, that's the charge of this committee. So certainly, if there are questions that Ms. Prado needs to submit, and then that's shared with the committee members, and then.
I think if when you answer the questions, Ms. Sandejo, that I sent you in emails, if you'll forward them to the committee members for them to see the responses. And then I'd like to get with you and maybe Mr. Baum before the weekend, before Sunday this week. I know everybody's busy. You have all kinds of meetings, and you do too, Mr. Baum. So if you can squeeze me in time, give me a day to sit down with you and give you some ideas, and we can work out the projects of what needs to be done. Because you say agenda for the 17th, when?
Right, but we have.
Well, but you can add that to the agenda, right? And not have.
My intent was, Mr. Mayor, I reached out to Global Environment Facilities Committee and facilities projects and how we were gonna take that on. So I think that if I'm hearing it correctly, Ms. Powell, you're going to send some follow-up questions and have some follow-up conversations regarding the facilities item on this agenda that then you'll subsequently share with the committee, and then see if we can get that on the agenda for the regular meeting on the 17th. Mr. Denny?
I need clarity, sir, only because of what you had brought forth, and I know there had been conversations about creating a facilities committee. So if this is the intent that Mrs. Prado is speaking to, I would think that best practice would be to create a wholesome committee rather than Mrs. Prado, myself, or Mr. Baum meeting without the committee, kind of like this type of environment that we currently have. So that's why I'm seeking clarity from you as to how are we moving forward with a facilities committee rather than just Mrs. Prado as a trustee or Mr. Baum as our consultant and myself as the superintendent currently through this process. So
Great question.
yes, that's a lot before the 17th.
No, great question, and I have a response.
Okay.
So Ms. Prado's follow-up questions are going to be specifically related to what's already been shared with the committee, right? Specific to these assessment, right? The one that she sent in.
Yes.
Well, with the intent, if we during our agenda session, our conversations that we'll have, the intent would be yes to establish that facilities committee going forward. To we have the assessment that's going to be done, and then how we're going to move forward from a facilities perspective with that facility committee. But what the follow-up questions and conversations are specific to what's been presented to the budget committee and this.
Okay. I'm still a little blurry because you're speaking specifically to HVAC and what we have to do there. So
it's actually the needs project list that was submitted to
so
the
that would
budget
be
committee.
That would be facilities.
So it's the budget committee has to decide on where we're gonna get the money
Right.
to fund these projects.
Right.
So the facilities people, Mr. Baum, I guess, you came up with the list. And so you have presented it to the budget committee now to say, okay,
I understand what you're saying, Ms. Nejo. So, yeah, it's,
kind of like in isolation, so I'm just trying to clarify.
well, no, not necessarily isolation, is the budget committee is gonna take, is gonna take
This action.
This piece here and forward the recommendation to the board of trustees.
Got it.
To see if we can get funding for these projects, right, and how we're gonna fund that. And then the facilities committee will take, is gonna, hopefully, in their charge, everything else, the rest of the facilities, needs of the district going forward. So just based on what's been presented, and we're saying it's gonna take, we have it was only actually $1 million worth of
Yes.
priority needs that are identified. So this committee is going to forward a recommendation based on those immediate needs that we want to fund right now, forward it to the board for the consideration and see if we can get started on that, right? And then whatever's left, whatever the TASB facilities assessment reveals, then the establishment of that facilities committee will tackle the rest of it. Does that make sense?
Yes, you're all gonna work together on it.
Stop. Without full board action, but the purpose of the facilities committee is to take a deeper dive, because, you know, the list, I cannot take credit for creation of the list when those items came from a 2015, you know, I mean, I have visited with the principal at Price about their roof, you know, and there's some consternation there. I'll just say that, but the facilities committee needs to be, you know, all knowing of all of our facilities conditions, and then establish a priority, not based on my opinion, not based on one person's opinion, but the prioritization of these projects. And we may have $5 million that we tell the finance committee, this has to be done right now. And the finance committee may not can find the resources for it. So they've got to work independent of each other, but also together. But, you know, we should be trying to not address this project or address that project, but to up our overall commitment, because we've gotten in the bind we have by not appropriating monies for those projects, by not prioritizing those projects, by turning a blind eye to what has to be done and putting it on what we feel needs to be done, which may change with the superintendent, it may change with the board turning over. You know, we've got to be moving in the same direction on this and prioritizing dollars.
Right, and that's precisely part of the reasoning behind, let's get this committee to forward a recommendation based on what's been presented to point. I understand it's, you know, what we have today based on the 2015, but if this committee can forward a recommendation to the board and say, you know what, we have a more current assessment that's going to be done. We're going to establish a facilities committee, but in the meantime, the budget committee has in their meetings identify these projects that will cost this amount of money. Do you guys can we get started? Because it seems to me that even by the time we get the TASB assessment done, we're already into the next fiscal year. So you know, either way, you know, I think the initiative here is to want to get something done. Yes, however many times that might a little bit. Show some goodwill, see if we can get some of that route. So, whatever that may be.
if I may, just if you can get progress on I attended a PTA meeting there and they have leaks.
Just leave it on. And I've been to some of their award ceremony in PTAs, and where they have the problem is the cafeteria, it leaks. It's that area there. So it's not the 34 units, it's that area that needs to be worked on now on that roof to get that fixed.
Yes, and that was delineated as a single project. I think it was 600,000.
Exactly. And
So what is the prioritization of that over the air conditioning gymnasium? Which comes first, you know? And you know, being both a classroom teacher and a PE teacher, and you certainly bring up a good point with the other events that are had in there, and that some of our gyms don't even have air conditioners. You know, we've got classrooms suffering. One of our campuses, Benavides, I believe, the temperature was 80 degrees, and we cannot. And I'm sorry, kids are not learning at 80 degrees.
Right.
They're not learning to read. They're not learning to write. They're not learning to do math, science, fill in the blank. You know, we do have flexible space with our PE programs in some instance. I'm not saying you're right. I'm not saying that I'm wrong. It's just there are a lot of considerations that we have done great work tonight chewing over the dollars and cents of this business. We need equal effort on our facility, chewing over facility.
it makes you kind of wonder, Benavides is one of our newest schools. What kind of maintenance are they doing to upkeep that facility? That we're having to do all this to one of our newest facilities.
It's 18 years old.
That's concerning. I know, but it's not okay. Your HVAC, you maintain the HVAC at the house 8, I understand what you're saying. The lifespan is 18, the lifespan is 24, whatever. But if it's like your car. You can have a car that has over 100,000 miles on it, one of these old clunkers, but by golly, if you keep the oil change and you change those spark plugs and you maintain it, it's going to keep going. I don't know for how long, but it's going to keep going. So, and that's what I'm getting at. We do need a maintenance schedule and a replacement schedule, and it's way overdue. Had we done that, we probably wouldn't have all of these great needs we have now. But we do have to start somewhere. So I agree.
Absolutely.
So to speak to Mrs. Prado, I would be happy to help with looking at facilities for some of our campuses other than the Kazans and Athens and West Campus that have some facilities needs that we need to look at, but balanced under the lens that there may be a couple of small immediate projects that need some attention, but I do want to be careful about the larger picture from a facilities update. And like Mr. Bond is saying, the old needs assessment it's 5 years out of date. There may be a few changes, so I think we need to be careful with how we move forward. But I do think there's some immediate projects, and I think that we need to look at it through the lens of, with the COVID crisis, that's not going to end. I think that there may be some changes in how we use our current spaces, and I think that through that lens, to speak to the gym at Benavides, it may be that due to social distancing, we need to make better use of some of the larger spaces like that, and maybe we need to make sure that those spaces are available for our students to learn and be comfortable in them. And so I do agree with you that we maybe need to look at some things, but because of some of the changes that are happening to the way we're probably going to have to conduct school next year. And those are immediate that we need to take action on sooner. But then my other concern is we need to make sure, like Mr. Rodriguez says, we need to have that zero-based budgeting and not detrimentally affect our fund balance with those.
Absolutely. And I think, as I stated, it has nothing, the fund balance is not going to be affected, and the CARE Act is not going to be affected. The key here is that every campus that's listed get a piece of the pie, a piece of that $2.3 million. We're going to talk. But we're going to brainstorm here. So I'm charged to find it. So we're going to roll talk about that.
And I think this is the challenge moving forward. I see Mr. Bond looking a little panicked over there. I think that the responsibility of this committee moving forward is, as we adopt new budget cycles, I think we need to earmark money for facilities maintenance, and that's an oversight that hasn't happened, and I think that we need to be charged to do that so that we don't find ourselves in this situation year after year. You have to expect that the efficiency of air conditioning units and roofs. They're going to break down. They're going to stop working, and we need to earmark money to rotate. And we're looking at this $7 million because we haven't been changing them out in sequence and staggering that. And if we are responsible with how we set a budget, I think that once we get past this big ask, then that's not this big surprise thing that hits us 10 years down the road, as we're looking at it a little bit every year.
Mr. Rasko, you absolutely hit the nail on the head, and you can remove the word facilities from that statement, and you can say the exact same thing about transportation. You know, and replacement of buses and replacement of white fleet and strategic routes where we're not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on charters to take students across town. And there's just, you know, we are kind of victims of our own doing in some of this. And, you know, let's own it. Let's go to it. Let's figure it out.
Technology, transportation, facilities. Yeah, I think we've got to get a handle on a responsible obsolescence plan for all of those things.
Yep.
And the way to more money is through ADA. More students, more money. That's how we're going to generate more money.
I don't have any further questions. Board members, any last minute thoughts? Ms. Alejo, Mr. Baum, anything? The final item on the agenda is adjournment. We have a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Prado,
I second it.
second by Ms. Rasko. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:23 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Good night.